Hey, St. John. Welcome to the Post-Sermon Podcast. I am Deacon Astalia, and with me today is Brian Schneck.
Hello, Deaconess. How are you?
I'm good. How are you?
Doing well.
Or maybe I should have addressed you as Seminarian, Brian Schneck.
I hate that title.
But you are in second year, right?
This is my second year, yes.
Yeah, that's awesome. And have you been having interviews for vicarage soon?
No, so the vicarage process, you have one interview with your placement director, and essentially that's it. So the first call process is longer, where you talk to individual churches, but not this year.
Okay. So you enjoy, and the family must be excited to find out in May, right? Where you guys will be
late
going.
April. So
late April, okay.
Yeah, last Tuesday in April, we'll find out. Excited, nervous, all of that stuff mixed together. So
sure.
Yep.
All right. So I'm having you on today because you preached at St. John last Sunday. What was the text that you preached on?
So the sermon text was Matthew 11, and it's the account when John is in prison and he sends his disciples to ask Jesus if he is the one or if they should look to another. That was the primary focus of the text. It goes on to talk about Jesus confirming John as the prophet who precedes the Messiah as well, but I didn't focus in on that much at all.
What was the central teaching of your sermon?
So when I examined the text, there's kind of two ways to think about what John is doing. And so the one is that John is always, in everything that he does, pointing people to Jesus as the Messiah. And so what is John doing? He's sending his disciples to say, hey, this actually is the Messiah. Go and follow him now. Or the other way to think about it is John having a crisis of faith? And is he now, while he's in prison, doubting? And so the main topic of the sermon, as I was thinking about it, was maybe both of these can be true at the same time. And is it reflective of the Christian life now? So that's what the sermon was focused around. So it's telling John's story and examining instances of confidence and doubt throughout his story, and then juxtaposing that with the Christian life.
And that was basically your refrain that you kept coming back to in your sermon, was that the Christian life is a dynamic between confidence and doubt.
Correct, yeah.
So I guess that does beg the question, is there room for doubt in the Christian life?
Well, I don't think there's any question about it. So yeah, there are times when you feel super confident in your faith and times when it's more difficult to feel that confidence. Yeah, having doubt doesn't mean that you don't have faith. It just means that you are in the old creation still. So we're in a world that hasn't been made right yet. And so we'll still struggle with sin and doubt and all of that stuff. But it doesn't mean that you're not a Christian. It doesn't mean that you don't belong to Jesus.
And this does bring me to a post-sermon podcast question from a hearer. You had mentioned there's different ways of reading that question that John brings to Jesus. Are you the one to come, or should we expect someone else while he's in prison? And so you mentioned it's possible he was going in that direction of doubt, that crisis of faith. Well, anyways, so the question is it possible John was goading Jesus, saying, reveal yourself. I know who you are. Tell the world.
I suppose that's possible. So that would fall under the category of John is confident in who Jesus is and what he has come to do. It would fall in that understanding of the question. But kind of the goading aspect is a little inconsistent with John's character from how I've read the text. So I suppose it's possible, but I don't see much reason to go in that direction. I don't know what it gains us particularly.
Yeah, and I guess we don't know exactly why John asked that question.
Right, and so that's what the sermon focuses around, is that Matthew doesn't tell us what is John's motivation. And so we can speculate, and some speculations are faithful. And I think that both speculations of, John has a crisis of doubt and John is confident, are faithful interpretations, and you don't have to pick one. So maybe one year you're reading it and it speaks to you in a sense of, hey, John is super confident, and so is my faith right now. And other times you'll read it, and it really is beneficial to connect to somebody who is doubting in a way that connects.
I do kind of want to ask you your opinion, like on some of Jesus's words. If we're kind of talking about the Christian life of like between doubt and confidence, which I think is very true, and it's going to depend on what season of life you're in and what you're going through. But Jesus would say some things that I want to ask, would you consider that like doubt, or how can we kind of process that as Christians? You know, he's in the Garden of Gethsemane, very distressed, and he's asking God, his Father, to take this cup from me. Not your will, but my will be done. And then even from the cross, he is, you know, crying out, my God, why have you forsaken me? So I guess I'm wondering, how do we look at that? Because we know Jesus is sinless. He's perfect. True man, true God. So how can we take those? Like, would we call that doubt? Because that also seems, I don't know. I don't know. Like,
yeah, thanks
you
for
know
the
what
heads
I mean?
up on that question.
Sorry, I really did
No,
just
it's
think
fine.
of this.
No, it's great. Yeah,
we can talk it out.
No, it's great. So in the context of the sermon, so John hears the words he hears what Jesus is doing. Healing the sick, raising the dead. So he is getting word of the incoming of the kingdom, right? So according to the prophecy, these things will accompany the Messiah to come. But his experience doesn't quite add up.
He's in prison.
He can't experience it in the way that he expects. But he also, at the same time, remembers the words on the banks of the Jordan of the Father saying, "This is my beloved Son." And so just struggling with the reality of life in the not yet recreated world, and the truth that Jesus will redeem you and resurrect you. So in terms of Jesus's words, I don't know if I would say it's doubt necessarily, but he definitely is going to experience unpleasantries and life in a world that's full of sin. So I don't know, is that a helpful answer? I don't know.
I think so. And I mean, looking throughout all of Scripture, the prophets, the book of Psalms, you have these cries of distress, these questions that don't sound, I don't know, maybe too different from John the Baptist. But it kind of goes back to what you're saying. John, he went back to God's promises and his word.
So ultimately, we can't really say anything about a person's motivations if the author doesn't tell us. But what we can say is what has been promised to us. And God fulfills his promises, and Jesus is the Messiah, and he's coming to do his work regardless of how you feel about it or how your faith is expressed that particular day. Jesus did die, he did rise from the dead, and he has made you one with himself. Yeah,
no, I think that's good. And kind of going back to Jesus's words, he trusted his Father, right? And that trust still included, he was still dealing with really hard feelings. He was very distressed, very much in angst, and that is okay. That wasn't wrong of him.
Yeah, so he's having the human experience
while still God, you know?
While still God, yep.
Yeah, exactly. In John the Baptist, we know, and he's not God. He's pointing to the Messiah. So if he asked that question in doubt or just wondering because he didn't know, he still went back to the words and promises of God.
I would say so, yeah. That's where Jesus points him to. Yeah.
That's where Jesus points him to.
Yeah.
And then goes back to maybe the text didn't exactly tell us, but your sermon mentioned he probably did think back to Jesus's baptism where God the Father spoke.
Yeah.
That this is my son.
Yeah. So the points that Matthew gives us between Jesus and John's interaction, I'm sure John is thinking about all throughout this, so. Yeah. He remembers the baptism. He recalls the words of Jesus. He recognizes where he quotes them from and all that's included in that greater Isaiah 35 message, which is the way of holiness. So John prepares the way for him, and Jesus saying, yes, you've done that, and I'm the guy.
So then how do you intend to benefit your hearers in their faith or life?
Yeah, so the hearers will certainly experience times of confidence in their faith and times of doubt in their faith. And so there's a certain kind of comfort or community knowing that other people are doing the same thing too. This is the Christian life. John experienced it. Your brothers and sisters in the congregation experience it. And all at the same time, Jesus tells us the same things, to look to the promises of Scripture. And so, yeah, you take comfort in the community, but also in what God has done for you.
Yeah. You're looking outside yourself.
Correct.
To the Word of God. Yeah. And something I really like that you brought up in your sermon, you mentioned some phrases that we would know. Like you said, like, the Lord be with you. And then we said, and also with you, the Lord is my shepherd. I shall not want, for God so loved the world. So just things like you said, like from our deepest memories. And I guess that is something like as we are in worship and in the life of the church, the stuff becomes ingrained in our hearts and in our minds. And so in those times where we are more on the side of doubt, like you said, there is something about being able to recall those or having fellow Christians tell us, or just hearing those words.
Yeah, so the words that you hear over and over will bring hope and comfort in times of doubt. And so I imagine that that's what happened to John, and I imagine that that's what happens to a lot of us in our faith. Is how often do we say, oh, that was a God moment when I heard the exact words that I needed to hear right then.
Yeah.
And so just, the slightest phrase recalls the whole greater story of what's happening, of God has come to bring comfort and peace, and I am his child.
Yeah. And that I think is really good to know this Advent and soon Christmas season it is a really difficult time of year for a lot of people. And maybe we are feeling more on that side of doubt, but still being able to be part of that story, coming to church, hearing it, like just singing the songs that we know by heart because we've heard so much. Like there's something just about practicing it and hearing the promises and not focusing so much on, do I believe enough, but rather just keep your eyes on Jesus.
And I think during the time of Advent, there's the unreal expectation that people put of you must celebrate, you must have joy, or you must feel a particular way at this time of year because Jesus is going to be born. And I think that that's not helpful to people who are going through difficult times. And the more helpful thing, is what you said, focus on the things outside of yourselves, on the promises that have been given to you. And even though your feelings may feel like you're not part of the community, you are a part of this congregation, experiencing Advent differently than you have in the past and you will in the future.
Yeah, I like what you said about expectations that we have for these things. In Advent, it is a season of waiting, right? We are remembering that we're not quite there yet. Like you said, we're in the old creation. We're waiting for Jesus to come again. And I think in that waiting, in that pain, that, whatever hard things we may be going through, it's a good reminder that this is why Jesus came in the first place, so that we're not alone in that pain. I would like to ask you about the process that you went through, because this is what number are you on with sermon?
4.
Number 4. Sermon number 4. Okay. Yeah. And I thought it was excellent. I think probably the sermons I've heard of yours, my favorite so far, and maybe
mine
other
as well.
Yours too. So I guess just walk me through your sermon writing process. Like, how did you get to the point of deciding to go down this direction?
Yeah, so first I write a full sermon, and then I throw it in the trash, and then I start over.
That sometimes happens, though, right? You have one idea, and it doesn't work.
So the process is you read the text, and you kind of just get your initial feelings. Which text am I going to choose? What are some of the main points of the particular text? Pastor Adam has been really helpful in pointing out that the best place to start is what is the hearer's need. So, like, a lot of times, especially in like the seminary mindset, is you get into the academic stuff very first, like breaking down a text. This is what this says. This is where we're going. This is where I want to end up. but in that process, you miss the connection to the hearer. So when you think about the text, you think, how does this speak to the needs of the people? And that's something that first of all, I need to get a lot better at, but is a good place to start. And so after I went through my initial invention phase, is the technical term, and I was like, okay, well, let's focus on the hearer and what do they need. And so from that, you can really take it in a lot of different, depending on what you come up with, in a lot of different ways. And so with this one, we're talking about, well, is John doubting or is he not? We don't have to choose. It could be both. They're both faithful, and people in the pews will hear them in different ways. And so can we speak to both of them at the same time?
Okay. And so did you have to start over?
No. So
no?
I forget. Okay. Probably. I don't know.
Okay.
So the other thing that the seminary mindset kind of cultivates is like explaining your idea. So the other helpful thing is that to show or to elicit the emotion that you hope to get, if you just explain it, the people will say, yes, that's true, but do they really hear it or experience it in a way that's meaningful to them? And so that's kind of where the hospital section of the hey, this is an evidence that we still live in a broken world. I could have just said, hey, we live in a world where people sin and people die and people go to the hospital.
But that's something tangible that we see. Yeah. We know that there are new hospitals being built.
And maybe even as you drive past Mount Carmel tomorrow, you'll see it and you'll be like, oh, I remember. Yeah, that's an evidence that Jesus hasn't come back yet. And so we still have the hope of the future. And so that the showing instead of explaining.
And I'd say another one was you brought up the baptisms that we had that Sunday too.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
That was a good connection. But yeah, no, I think that's really cool about the sermon writing process. And I would imagine, I mean, you're still really new at it. And so I'm sure it took a long time as well. And so it'll be kind of cool to see just as you keep on writing sermons, like, I don't know, just how things will change and how you'll grow.
Sure. It's an exercise in humility for sure. So you write something and you think, this is good. And then somebody else reads it and they're like, I don't understand what you're saying. So,
exercise in humility. Yeah. That is hard if you're like writing something and it's like, oh, this is it. And then they're like, what does this mean? This is
yeah. So there's that. But no, it's a good process and been very helpful in that. So I'm appreciative.
Awesome. Well, very good. Well, it's awesome to have you around again and having you
I appreciate
preach.
It. Thank you for...
Okay, well, this wraps up the episode for today. Thank you for listening to our discussion. In case you missed the sermon or you'd like to listen to it again, the link to the sermon is in the show notes. You can also find it on our church website, stjohndublin.org. And if you, the listener, would like to submit a question about a sermon, please email us at podcast@stjohndublin.org. Thank you, Brian, for joining me and for feeding us the word this week.
Thanks for having me.
All right, take care, you guys. Bye.
Bye.